Hello, I'm Jim Shields, your town moderator, and I'd like to welcome you to this preview of the warrant articles which will be acted upon at the special town meeting to be held on Monday, October 19th at the high school, and the meeting begins at 7 o'clock. There are 21 articles on the warrant. A number have been sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, some by the Board of Public Works, some by the Community Preservation Committee, and one by the Planning Board. A couple of the articles will require a supermajority to pass, 90%. A couple require a 2/3 majority, and as is customary, the balance of them require a simple majority. The first four articles on the warrant are sponsored by the Community Preservation Committee, and the first three relate to improvements at some of the school property which will be of benefit to the school and to the town. And here to explain Articles 1 through 3 are Rich Ficero from the School Committee and Gordon Smith, the Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. The School Committee, in conjunction with the Community Preservation Commission, is presenting three articles. Each article is for playground equipment for our town's children and families. Mr. Gordon Smith, our superintendent, will review each article individually. The first article deals with Mountain View. Mr. Smith?
Sure. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to talk or speak to these articles. At the Mountain View School, we have Article number 1, looking at replacing a playscape piece of equipment, which is a pretty comprehensive playground piece of equipment that has slides and climbing areas and various activities for children. It's a playscape that the article is looking for $52,000 to replace a current playscape that is over 20 years old, and over the last few years we've had to reduce its size to take away areas that have become unsafe. So it's breaking down, which equipment tends to do over time, and we're looking to replace it with a piece of equipment that will not only meet the needs of a school of roughly 303 students, but also the recreational needs of our children throughout the town. Because not only during the day will possibly students that are not in school, children that are not in school, come with their parents and play on these playgrounds, but certainly after school gets out, we see the townspeople coming not only to recreational games, and that younger siblings may go over and play on the equipment. Every day at Mountain View and all our schools, our playgrounds are used by the students in the school.
Our second article of the three is with Mapleshade.
Okay, and at Mapleshade, this is also looking to add to the playground area. It's not replacing equipment, it's actually augmenting the climbing equipment we have there. What we're looking to do, certainly if there's equipment that is used, it is safe, and our children are enjoying, not only the school children, but children throughout town, we're looking to add other options. So in this case, we're looking to provide a new heavy-duty multi-bay swing set, which will provide more opportunity for our students during the school day at recess to get into recreational activity, but also provide other options as children are coming out after school and parents and children are at the rec games that take place on the Mapleshade fields. Again, younger siblings utilize the playgrounds, and this will give people an option 7 days a week.
And finally, the third article of the three is at Meadowbrook.
Meadowbrook, which actually of the three elementary schools, because this is pre-K through 2 and all our children start there, it's a school of 568 students. It also, similar to Mountain View, has a playscape equipment that's currently there that's breaking down. Over the last year, we've taken down at least 2 sections, so we've reduced the size of the current playscape considerably, and we had to reduce it because the areas were unsafe. So we're looking to have or meet the needs not only of the town's children, but the students, the 568 students that are there. And this is, being a bigger school, it's a more comprehensive piece of playground equipment that is in the neighborhood of around $79,000. And what we feel is if we can address the needs in 1 year where all 3 playgrounds come up to really a level that's safe, that's accessible for all children, that we'll be accomplishing something that will be good not only for the students in each school, but for the children throughout the entire town.
And I'd just like to add to what Mr. Smith said, that we're very proud to say that we work very closely with the Community Preservation Committee, as stated already, with the Recreation Commission, and also the Department of Public Works. So this is really a concerted effort to benefit both the town's children and the town's families.
And the funding for this would come from community preservation funds as
Correct.
opposed from the general fund.
Correct. This is different than operating budget, correct, sir?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Article 4 is also sponsored by the Community Preservation Committee. It has to do with the restoration of some fire apparatus. And here to explain Article 4 is Ed McCandless. Ed.
All right, thank you, Jim, for having me tonight. I'll keep it brief, and I hope I hit on all the key points. It's a pleasure to sit before you tonight as not only a member of the East Long Meadow Fire Department, but the Firefighters Association as well, and something that I feel I guess you could say a personal connection to, being a lifelong resident of this town, is the Firefighters Association is currently seeking funds not to exceed $25,000, basically as I guess you could say a kickoff to the restoration of the town's 1924 Seagrave suburbanite pumper. Just a brief history of the truck. It's the first motorized fire apparatus that the town ever purchased. The fact that we still have it, I think, is fantastic. There's been many different attempts over the years, or decades, I'll say, to kind of get it going. I know there was a big push to get it up for the 1994 centennial, and here we are 21 years later, and it's still kind of, not quite together. Unfortunately, a lot of the gentlemen that had a lot of knowledge of the older vehicles and where all these little intricate parts went have either retired and or passed away. And as time goes by, these people are becoming harder and harder to find. A brother firefighter of mine, Bill Hool, who I serve on the department with, has sought out 3 different quotes, and they actually just exceed the $25,000 we're looking for. We're not looking for any more than the $25,000. The Firefighters Association would be willing to put forth a little bit of money that we have, as well as do some fundraising to supplement the rest. But basically what we're asking for is, like I said, just a kickoff, of a one-time funding of $25,000 to really get this thing off the ground and moving. And there's some companies that are actually very local to us that have the knowledge and are willing to undertake this project.
And this will enable the vehicle to actually get out on the road.
Correct. The $25,000, it's not going to be a restoration that you'd see at a car show at Pebble Beach, but it's going to make it roadworthy. It's going to run, stop, steer, do everything a vehicle should while not rattling itself apart. Luckily, we do have a lot of the major components, the drivetrain, brakes, etc. It's just some of the finer things have kind of, I'll say, gone missing over the years. That's what we, the association, would be willing to fund out of our own pocket. But again, we ask for the support of the initial kickoff.
And where is the truck now, and where will it be stored once the restoration takes place?
It's currently housed at the firehouse up on Summers Road. It's tucked away in a rear bay where it's sat since 1997 when the building was built. And like I said, there's been several attempts over the years. I even got involved once, and it just, after about a half an hour, your head starts to spin. So it's definitely out of our scope, unfortunately. But I do think it's great that the town has maintained ownership of it, and we're obviously looking to keep it. We're not looking to get this fixed and then sell it for a profit. The vehicle will stay in the fire department for the rest of its existence.
I would suspect that not many towns still have their first motorized piece of apparatus.
Hamden has I think it's a 37 Ford that actually never came apart and is pretty original. But yeah, a lot of towns around us, unfortunately, that stuff. Yeah, they sell it cheap at auction because they need to make room for newer trucks, and they usually end up disappearing. But this one has managed to stay in town since 1924, so it'd be great to see it back together.
Okay, that's Article 4 for the warrant. The Board of Selectmen has sponsored 12 articles on the warrant. Articles 5 through 7 all relate to the position currently occupied by Tom Florence as the town's treasurer, collector, and clerk. And Articles 5, 6, and 7 relate to stipends that a town treasurer, collector, or clerk may be entitled to receive if they pass certain certification courses that are offered by the state. Each one of the stipends that is authorized by statute, in this case, is approximately $1,000. And so what the Articles 5 through 7 is intended to accomplish is to accept the state statutes which allow for the payment of those amounts to the town treasurer, collector, and clerk. 4 of the articles on the warrant for the special town meeting have been sponsored by the Board of Public Works. And here to explain Articles 8, 9, and 10 is Dan Burek, a member of that board. Dan.
Thank you, Jim. Article 8 regards the the Water Enterprise Fund. And Article 8 is, I move the town increase the personnel service appropriation approved at the May 18th, 2015 annual town meeting for the Water Enterprise Fund by $4,697, with this increase to be funded through the water fund balance. And basically what this is the contract negotiations that were settled after the annual town meeting, but were signed before the fiscal year ended. Basically, the adjustments cover increases for DPW contract personnel and service building union personnel assigned to the water department. The contracts were signed prior to the end of the fiscal year, but after the annual town meeting was held, and the averages increase is 1.2%.
Now, this is, the townspeople may recall that the enterprise fund was new this year.
This
That
is
was
the first
adopted
year.
at the May annual meeting.
Right.
With the water enterprise fund, the sewer, and then the remaining general fund. And I'm sure you're going to be
Correct.
addressing both of those
Correct.
In the next articles.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So move on to the next article then, please.
Okay. Article 9 will be, I move the town increase the personnel service appropriation approved at the May 18th, 2015 annual town meeting for the Sewer Enterprise Fund by $4,227, with this increase to be funded through the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Same thing, the adjustments cover the salary increases for DPW contract personnel and service building union personnel assigned to the sewer department. The contracts were signed prior to the end of the fiscal year, but after the annual town meeting was held, and again, the increase averages 1.2%.
Okay.
That's the sewer one. Article 10 is, I move the town increase the personnel service appropriation approved at the May 18th, 2015 annual town meeting for the Public Works Division 421 Administration and Highway by $17,597, and Division 422 Building Maintenance by $6,225, with a total increase of $23,822 to be funded from free cash. And again, the adjustments cover the salary increases for DPW contract personnel and DPW service building union personnel assigned to the administration, highway, and buildings facilities departments. The contracts were signed prior to the end of the fiscal year, but after the annual town meeting was held. And again, the increase averages 1.2%.
Thank you. Articles 11 through 19 relate primarily to personnel matters. Article 11 speaks to the personal services budget of the Board of Selectmen, looking to increase that amount by roughly $3,300 to be paid to the benefits manager. Articles 12 through 14 all relate to what is called the Other Post-Employment Benefits, or OPEB. And this has been a subject that's been discussed at several of the past annual town meetings. Essentially, it is the funding for benefits such as health insurance, which accrue for the benefit of a retiree from the employment of the town. And it is to provide for a funding mechanism by which those benefits can be paid. The first of the articles relating to that, Articles 12 and 13, specifically authorize the town to set up a reserve account to fund it, and then authorizes the transfer from the general fund, basically, which is where the amounts that had been appropriated in prior years was deposited, to have those funds transferred into the new reserve account which is being set up. And then the next article speaks to funding the account with an additional $1 million from free cash. The source of this funding comes largely from funds that were discovered, if you will, through the diligent efforts of the town treasurer with closed capital accounts and other accounts for which refunds came back to the town, and the Appropriations Committee has supported the application of $1 million of those funds into this reserve account to be established for the post-employment benefits. Article 15 is somewhat similar. It doesn't relate specifically to other post-employment benefits, but it does relate to funds that may be due to a retiree. It has to do with what are called compensated absences. For example, when an employee retires, they may have accrued sick time or vacation time or other forms of payment to which they are entitled. And rather than have those funds, which could be unanticipated, one might not know when someone is going to retire, rather than have those funds come from the operating budget, the personnel operating budget of the particular department, to establish a reserve account which will be periodically funded, and the funds in that account will then be used to satisfy the requirements of the payments that are due to the retiree. Article 16 relates to additional funding, increasing the personal services budget for amounts to be paid to the electrical inspector and the plumbing inspector. Articles 17 and 18 are somewhat unique in that and these are the two articles that will require a supermajority because they relate to the payment of bills incurred in a prior fiscal year, and the vote is taking place at a special town meeting. When you have both of those together, it requires a super majority in order to pass. And these both relate to amounts that were incurred that were in excess of the amounts that had been appropriated at the town meeting for the particular line items in question, one having to do with police overtime, the other having to do with the legal services budget. And finally, as amongst the articles being sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, Article 19 also speaks to amounts that were previously authorized for borrowing, but ultimately were not needed for the purposes for which the borrowing was incurred. And as you'll note in the article, there are perhaps 8 or so amounts, all relatively modest. The total of all of them comes to about $2,200 and change. And what the article does is to have those funds rescind the borrowing authority for those, since the purposes for which the borrowing was incurred has been satisfied without the need of those particular funds. As you know, the town's bylaw requires that the Appropriations Committee make a recommendation to town meeting on matters involving the expenditure of funds. Normally, the recommendations are published with the warrant in the reminder. Because of time deadlines this year, that didn't quite make it. Only a few of the recommendations or non-recommendations did make it in. However, when we have the town meeting itself, both the Appropriations Committee and, where appropriate, the Capital Planning Committee will have recommendations. And with me tonight to go through the Appropriations Commission, Committee's recommendations is Eric Madison, who is the chair of that committee. Eric.
Jim, thank you. I'm going to run through each of these articles very briefly and provide you, the viewers, with the recommendations of the Appropriations Committee. The Appropriations Committee met over a series of 2 or 3 meetings reviewing each of these articles to formulate our recommendations. Article 1 deals with purchase of playscape equipment for Mountain View School for $52,000 and is recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 2 deals with the purchase of swing sets for Maple Shade School for $18,500 and is also recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 3 deals with the purchase of playscape equipment from Meadowbrook School for $79,000. At the time of the taping of this show, the Appropriations Committee has not yet formulated a recommendation on this article, and we will be making a recommendation as it pertains to this article on town meeting floor. Article 4 deals with the restoration of a 1924 Seagraves pumper by the fire department for $25,000. This article is not recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 5, 6, and 7 all deal with the acceptance of certain provisions of Massachusetts general laws. These provisions allow our collector, clerk, treasurer to receive a stipend when he meets certain criteria or performs to a certain standard or level in his given duties. Each of these articles, 5, 6, and 7, is recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 8, 9, and 10 all deal with appropriating money for the Department of Public Works, the Water Department, and the Sewer Department in the settlement of the collective bargaining agreement with the DPW workers. It's done in 3 articles because the DPW workers are paid out of 3 different accounts: the general fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund. Each of these articles is recommended by the Appropriations Committee, as all the collective bargaining is very reasonable and sustainable in our minds. Article 11 deals with the increase of the personal services budget for the benefits manager for $3,333.33. This article is not recommended by the Appropriations Committee, and I'd like to explain a couple quick reasons why. First, it's been the policy of the Appropriations Committee to deal with grade changes or increase in pay because of change in job status at the time that we do the annual operating budget. That way, the full impact of each of these changes can be evaluated not just in the given fiscal year, but over the long term. It is our recommendation not to do these type of articles at the fall town meeting. Secondly, this is the first year of a 3-year agreement with the benefits manager, each for $3,333, or essentially a $10,000 raise over 3 years. This would bring the pay for the benefits manager up over $60,000 annually. An evaluation of what benefit managers make within the region, for example, Chicopee $41,600, Westfield $42,640, and Westfield Schools $51,731, demonstrates that we believe that this raise is absorbent and unsustainable. Again, Article 11 is not recommended. Article 12 deals with the acceptance of a provision of Mass General Law 32B, Section 20, to establish a trust fund for post-employment benefits, other post-employment benefits. You often hear us refer to this as OPEB. Our OPEB liabilities in this town is well into the millions. These are the post-employment benefits that we owe retirees who have served the town and justly retired from those positions. This trust fund will allow us to start establishing, putting in money into the trust fund, and at some point, when it reaches its a full funding level, to start paying those post-employment benefits from the trust fund. This article is recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 13 and Article 14 will deal with, if Article 12 passes, the establishment of the liability trust fund, the post-employment liability trust fund, to transfer in Article 13 $50,000 that was appropriated at previous town meetings, annual meetings, to put aside toward our post-employment benefit obligations. This would simply move the money from the general ledger into the newly established post-employment trust fund. Article 14 deals with moving $1 million from the town's free cash or unobligated funds into the newly established OPEB trust fund. I want to explain this large transfer of funds. At the end of last fiscal year, there was a lot of work done by our new town accountant, and there was a great deal of money that was discovered and returned back to the general fund from the overlay account, as well as from closed capital projects. Those are capital projects that were complete, but all the funds were not expended. These are the two major reasons that an additional $1.2 million will be turned back into the town's free cash. This is a one-year opportunity, and we figured it was a good opportunity to boost our OPEB liabilities with money that would have no impact on department operations. Article 14 is recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 15 deals with the adoption of another Massachusetts general law, Chapter 40, Section 13D, which will allow the town to establish a fund for compensated absences due to employees. Let me explain this a little further. A problem that we run into frequently in the town is when an individual retires from a particular department. When that individual retires, they're oftentimes owed a lot of vacation time, personal time, even unused sick time based on the collective bargaining agreements they have in that department. This has created a tremendous financial impact and problem for each of the department dealing with those retirements, as they have to fund from a budget that was not particularly budgeted as such, these compensated absences when an individual retires. The establishment of this fund will allow us to every year put a little more money into this fund, and when an individual retires, their compensated absences that they are due when they retire will be paid from this fund. This will do two major things for the town. One, it will allow the town to evaluate and ensure that the money being paid out to each individual is in fact what's due to them, no more and no less. Secondly, it will allow the department to continue to operate as planned without the financial impact of a retiree that was unknown at the time of the budget development. This article is recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 16 deals with the increase in personal services budget for the Board of Selectmen's office, for the building in the building inspector's department, to increase the electrical inspector and plumbing inspector's salaries. Again, this article is not recommended by the Appropriations Committee, as it is our preference to deal with these types of increases during the annual budget process, so the full evaluation and the impact of such raises can be evaluated. Article 16, therefore, is not recommended by the Appropriations Committee. Article 17 deals with the funding of bills from last fiscal year for the police department in the amount of $21,527. Most of this money was incurred in the overtime budget of the police department. A point that the Appropriations Committee wishes to make on this article and on Article 18 is it is in violation of Massachusetts general law to overexpend funds that were appropriated in a given fiscal year. Additionally, it's obviously very poor financial practices and not good for the town's financial health. The Appropriations Committee has taken a strong stance in this article and not recommending the passage of this article. Now, this doesn't mean that any bills won't get paid, nor does it mean that any police officers won't get overtime. In fact, they've already been paid for this money. This will, however, send a strong message to our town leadership that they cannot overexpend appropriated amounts in each department, budget, or line item. Article 18 is for the same type of article, except in this case in the legal department, for $25,242. Again, this article is not recommended by the Appropriations Committee, as we're taking a strong stance on the overexpenditure of budgets that were appropriated at annual town meeting. Last but not least is Article 19. Article 19 deals with previous bond authorizations that were made at other town meetings. When a project is going to be bonded, the town authorizes the town to borrow up to a certain amount of money. In these cases presented here, the full amount that was authorized was not needed for each project. So therefore, not as much money was borrowed as was authorized to borrow. This article will simply clean up the remaining balances that were authorized, therefore reducing that liability from the town's general ledger. It's in a small amount. It's a number of projects that total $2,225, and it is recommended by the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you to the members of the Appropriations Committee. I know you're about to begin the budget task for the upcoming annual town meeting and the budget to be presented then. And this, I guess, gives you a good warm-up with the 19 articles that the committee has made recommendations for or against, and I very much appreciate it. The town does as well.
Thank you, Jim.
Article 20 has also been sponsored by the Board of Public Works, and back again to explain Article 20 is Dan Burek from the board.
Thank you, Jim. Article 20 is, I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take in fee simple pursuant to the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 79, or otherwise acquired as a town way, Fenway Lane, as described in Article 20 of the warrant, and that no damages be awarded for said taking. If I can explain that one, Fenway Lane is a short cul-de-sac that services 6 residential lots off Allen Street. It's about 750 feet long. It was originally constructed in 2006, and the lots of the subdivision have been developed over the past 9 years. The street is now fully built out. The purpose of this article is to request a town meeting approval to accept Fenway Lane as a town street. And after being reviewed by both the Board of Public Works and the Planning Board, both boards have voted to support passage of this article.
Great. Thank you very much. The final article on the warrant is Article 21, sponsored by the Planning Board. And as you'll note from the warrant, it goes on for several pages, but essentially what it is in 25 words or less is a republication of the definitions section within the Planning Board, within the zoning bylaw promulgated by the Planning Board and adopted by the town. I'm told that approximately 20 or 25 of the definitions do have some modifications, but that none of those are substantive modifications. with the possible exception of one having to do with a definition of a kennel. But the balance of the definitions are simply to make the language within the definitions consistent with the language otherwise used throughout the zoning bylaw. And since this does contemplate an amendment to the zoning bylaw, this will require a 2/3 vote at the town meeting. So that's the run-through of what you can expect when you come, and I hope you do come, to the special town meeting on the 19th at 7 o'clock. With 21 articles, I'm hoping that we can move through the warrant rather expeditiously. It should not be a very late evening. We welcome your input, to your opportunity to exercise your right to come, participate, debate, and then vote on these important matters for the town. I hope to see you then. Thank you.